The human technician had always believed his job was the most ordinary job anyone could have in space. He repaired wires, checked broken panels, and made sure long-range radios didn't fail during important moments. He didn't see himself as brave or important. He wasn't a soldier, he wasn't a diplomat, and he definitely wasn't someone who attracted attention. He liked quiet corners, warm coffee, and tasks that didn't require too much talking. That was his life, and he had accepted it. But everything changed the moment the diplomatic team boarded the alien queen's ship. The ship itself was unlike anything he had ever seen. It didn't feel like metal. It felt alive. The walls shimmered, softly like they were breathing. The floor hummed under his boots, adjusting to his footsteps as if the ship sensed him. He stayed close to the human group, trying to understand the strange environment without looking too nervous. The humans were there for a simple exchange. At least that's what he was told. A communication link between the two species kept breaking. Down, and the Queen had requested the best technicians to fix it. Somehow, he had been selected. Maybe his commander thought he needed more real-world experience. Maybe someone ran out of names and picked his by accident. He didn't know. He didn't argue. When he finally saw the alien queen for the first time, he felt his breath catch without warning. She wasn't frightening the way some stories described her people. Yes, she was tall, taller than any human he'd seen. Her form looked powerful, but not in a dangerous way, more like someone who carried years of responsibility on her shoulders. Her skin glowed faintly, changing colors depending on the light, like the surface of a calm ocean. Her eyes were steady but gentle, watching everything with a quiet intelligence. He didn't stare long, but he knew instantly that she wasn't. Just a leader. She was someone others followed out of respect, not fear. He told himself to stay focused. He was only there to repair the communication panel. Nothing more. He wiped his palms on his uniform, pretending he wasn't sweating, and followed an alien guard who led him to a raised platform where the main device was located. The Queen stood on the opposite side of the room, surrounded by her advisors. They were discussing something he didn't understand, their voices soft and rhythmic like a flowing river. He could hear bits and pieces of their language, but his translator device wasn't catching everything. He didn't need to know what they were saying anyway. He just needed to do his job. He crouched beside the panel, pulled out his toolkit, and started unscrewing the metallic cover. The inside looked complicated, more wires than he expected, some glowing, some pulsing faintly, like tiny hearts. He leaned closer, trying to trace the broken connection. While he worked, he felt something, a presence. It wasn't heavy or frightening, just there. He looked up. The Queen was watching him, not in a suspicious way, not like he was a threat. She looked curious. Her head tilted slightly, as if she was trying to understand what he was doing, or maybe trying to understand him. The other advisors continued their discussion, but she didn't join them. Her attention stayed fixed on him. He swallowed hard and returned to the panel, trying to pretend he didn't notice. But his heartbeat was loud in his ears. His fingers trembled slightly. He hoped she couldn't see that from where she stood. After a few minutes, he realized she was still looking at him. She hadn't moved. His mind panicked. Was he doing something wrong? Was she expecting him to talk? Was he supposed to greet her? Oh, did humans bow? He didn't know. No one gave him instructions for this. He tried to focus again, but the pressure of her eyes made his nerves twist in his stomach. He stood up to reach a panel on the upper side and accidentally looked directly at her. Their eyes met, and that was when his mouth betrayed him. The words slipped out without any warning, without any chance for him to stop them. You're beautiful. The room froze. It was like everything stopped breathing. Even the soft hum of the ship seemed to pause. He felt the blood drain from his face. His heart fell straight into his shoes. He had absolutely no idea why he said it. He didn't plan it. He didn't even think it fully. The words just escaped him like steam from a bursting pipe. He immediately regretted it. Alien guards stiffened. Some of them took a step forward. The Queen's advisors turned sharply, surprised. Humans around him stared with wide eyes, silently screaming, "What did you just do?" His own legs felt weak. His hands shook. He wanted to crawl inside the communication panel and never come out again. He opened his mouth, trying to apologize, but no sound came out. He didn't know how alien royalty reacted to compliments. Maybe it was an insult. Maybe it was disrespectful. Maybe he had accidentally started an interplanetary war by saying something stupid. He had no idea. Then he noticed the Queen's expression. She didn't look angry. She didn't look offended. She looked surprised. Not the kind of surprise that comes from insult or shock, but the kind that comes from hearing something completely new, something she never expected to hear from anyone. Her eyes softened slightly, and she blinked once as if trying to confirm that he had truly said what she thought he did. The guards waited for her command. The advisors whispered among themselves. The humans held their breath. Then the Queen raised her hand gently. Everyone fell silent. She took a step toward him, then another. Her footsteps were quiet but powerful, like each step carried weight far heavier than her body. She stopped a few feet in front of him. Up close, she looked even more striking. Her features were delicate, yet strong. Her glowing skin shifted into softer colors, almost peaceful. He forced himself to stay steady, though his knees felt like they might collapse. The Queen spoke, but her voice wasn't loud or strict. It was calm. "What did you call me?" Her expression wasn't threatening. It was genuinely confused. He swallowed. His throat burned with embarrassment. I didn't mean anything disrespectful," he whispered. It slipped out." Her eyes searched his face, as if she was trying to understand why a human, someone small, someone unimportant, would dare speak honestly to her in a room full of her people. She glanced around, then lifted her hand again. This time, she directed the gesture toward her guards and advisors. "Leave us," she said. The room reacted instantly. Every alien bowed slightly and walked out without question. The humans hesitated, unsure if they should follow, but one of the Queen's commanders signaled them to exit. Within moments, the large chamber emptied. Only the Queen and the technician remained. He stood frozen. She watched him with quiet curiosity. "You speak without fear," she said softly. "Why?" He shook his head quickly. "I was afraid. I still am." "Yet you spoke your thought," she said. "No one does that with me." He didn't know what to say. He wished someone would come rescue him, or at least give him a manual, titled, "What to Do When You Accidentally Compliment an Alien Queen." She walked closer again, slowly circling him as if studying his presence. "Humans see the world differently," she murmured. "Or perhaps you see me differently." His face grew hot. He stared at the floor. "I didn't mean to make things awkward." "It was a mistake, was it?" she asked. He looked up, surprised by her tone. The Queen's expression was softer, now thoughtful, almost gentle. "No one has ever looked at me the way you did," she continued. "Not as a ruler, not as a symbol. You saw me as something else." He wished he could rewind time. He wished he had stayed quiet, kept his focus on the wires, done his job without talking. But the Queen didn't seem upset. Instead, she seemed grateful. He didn't know what to think. Her eyes stayed on him a moment longer, then she stepped aside and looked at the repaired panel. "You may continue your work," she said quietly. "I will remain." "Remain? Why?" He didn't dare ask. He knelt back down and resumed working, but this time The atmosphere felt different. The pressure was gone. Instead, he felt a strange sense of calm, like she wasn't watching him as a leader, watching a worker, but as someone trying to learn who he really was. He worked slowly, carefully. She stood nearby, silent but present. For the first time, he realized she wasn't intimidating because she wanted to be feared. She was intimidating because no one ever treated her like a normal person. Maybe that was why his words affected her so deeply. When he finished the repairs, he stood up and wiped his hands. The Queen looked at him, her expression unreadable. "You are not like the others," she said quietly. He didn't know if that was good or bad. "I hope that's okay." She stared at him for a long moment, then replied in a soft voice that carried more meaning than he understood. "It is more than okay." He didn't know it yet, not at that moment. Not when he nervously packed his tools. Not when she watched him leave the chamber. But that single, accidental compliment had already changed his future, and hers. After the strange moment in the Queen's chamber, the technician thought his life would return to normal. He hoped the Queen would forget what he said, forget the way he froze, forget the way he accidentally called her beautiful. He hoped everyone would pretend it never happened. But that wasn't what happened at all. The next morning, when he woke up on the human ship, he found 2 alien guards waiting outside his door. Their tall frames filled the hallway, their glowing armor reflecting the dim lights. They didn't look angry or threatening. They just stood there calmly, as if guarding something important. When he stepped out, one of them bowed slightly and said, "The Queen requests your presence." His heart dropped into his stomach. Why was she calling him again? Did she finally decide to punish him? Did she think more about what he said, and now wanted to lecture him? He wanted to run back inside and pretend he didn't hear anything. But the guards were polite and patient. They didn't force him. They just waited. He followed them quietly. The alien corridors were still strange to him. Everything glowed softly, like the ship had its own heartbeat. Their technology was advanced, beautiful, in a way that didn't look mechanical. It felt natural, smooth, alive. As he walked, his mind kept replaying yesterday's scene. The way the Queen looked at him. The way she seemed more curious than angry. The way she spoke, as if she wasn't talking to a technician, but to someone meaningful. He tried to erase the thoughts, but they refused to leave. When they reached the Queen's chamber again, the guard stepped aside and let him enter alone. The door closed behind him with a soft, warm sound. The Queen was standing near a large window, gazing at the stars outside. Light from the galaxy fell on her, making her glow softly, like she was part of the stars themselves. She turned when she sensed him. "You came," she said in her calm voice. He swallowed. "Your guard said you wanted to see me." "I did." She walked closer, her steps graceful and quiet. There was no tension in her posture, no hint of anger. If anything, she looked thoughtful, almost gentle. He waited nervously, not knowing what to expect. "Yesterday," she began slowly, "you said something I have never heard from anyone." His face heated instantly. He knew exactly what she meant. "Really didn't mean anything wrong," he said quickly. "I wasn't trying to disrespect you. It just slipped out." She didn't seem offended. In fact, her expression softened even more. "I asked you to come today because I want to understand something," she said. "Humans speak in ways my people do not. You express thoughts, feelings. You say what you see, not what you are expected to say." He wasn't sure if that was true for all humans, but she seemed genuinely interested. She took one more step closer, then paused. "Why did you say I was beautiful?" He froze again. He tried to form a reply, but his words kept tangling inside his throat. He felt like a child trying to explain something simple that suddenly felt impossible. Finally, he answered honestly, I think. I said it because I was surprised, not in a bad way. I didn't expect you to look the way you do. I was nervous. And you were standing there quietly, looking at me. I didn't know what to do, and the words just came out. The Queen studied his face for a long moment. You spoke without planning, she said, without fear. I was scared, he corrected quietly. I just reacted. Yet you still spoke, she said. He didn't know what to say. The Queen walked past him and gestured toward a small circular table. Sit. He sat carefully, unsure if it was allowed. She took the seat opposite him. A soft light formed between them, a natural glow from the table itself. I want to learn about you, she said gently. About humans, about how you think. He blinked. Me? Why me? You spoke honestly, she replied. Honesty is rare in my world. He didn't feel special. He didn't feel wise or important. He was just a technician who accidentally said something embarrassing. But the Queen seemed to see something more. She asked him simple questions, not as a leader questioning a worker, but as someone sincerely curious how humans communicated, why they used compliments, why they smiled, what it meant when someone felt nervous or shy. He answered everything as plainly as he could. He explained that humans often spoke without thinking when emotions were strong. He explained that sometimes people said things because they felt overwhelmed, not because they planned to. The Queen listened carefully, absorbing every word. Your people show their thoughts on their faces, she observed. Your eyes move. Your mouth changes shape. You cannot hide emotions. That's true, he said with a small laugh. Most of us can't. In my world, she said softly, emotion is dangerous. If a leader shows too much feeling, it is seen as weakness. That sounds lonely, he said before thinking. The Queen's expression faltered slightly, just for a moment. It is, she whispered. The room fell quiet. Not uncomfortable, quiet, just soft, calm, real. He realized something then. For the first time, the Queen wasn't speaking like a ruler. She was speaking like someone who hadn't had an honest conversation in a long time. She stood up after a moment and gestured for him to follow her to a larger hall where several alien commanders were gathered. They looked surprised to see him with her. This human will observe our meeting, the Queen announced. Several aliens looked at one another, clearly confused. One stepped forward. He is a technician, not a strategist, the commander said respectfully. I want his perspective, she replied. The hall fell silent again. The technician felt completely out of place. He didn't understand their maps or symbols. He didn't know their politics. He wasn't trained for any of this. But the Queen wanted him there, so he stayed as they discussed border issues and colony disputes. He listened closely. Their strategies were complex, full of rules and traditions. But to him, many problems sounded like misunderstandings, not actual threats. At one point, he quietly said, maybe if you just send a message asking what they actually need, the argument might calm down. The room looked at him like he had said something unbelievable, but the Queen nodded slowly. A simple approach, she murmured, but perhaps a wise one. The commanders exchanged uneasy glances. They weren't used to this kind of thinking. After the meeting, the Queen walked beside him. You think differently, she said. I'm just saying what makes sense to me, he replied. That is what interests me, she said. You do not fear me. You do not try to gain anything from me. You simply speak. I think that's because I don't understand your world well, he admitted. Maybe if I did, I'd be more careful. She looked at him thoughtfully. I hope you never become too careful. He didn't know how to respond to that. Over the next days, she called for him again and again. Not for repairs, but for questions, conversations, observations. She wanted to understand his mind, how humans reacted, how they solved problems, why they cared about small things others ignored. He began to see sides of her no one else saw. When they were alone, she relaxed. Her shoulders rested slightly. Her voice softened. She asked questions not as a queen, but as a person seeking connection. Sometimes she even smiled, a small, barely visible change in her expression, but enough to warm the room. The alien commanders didn't like it. He noticed their stares during meetings. They whispered among themselves, wondering why the queen was spending time with a simple human technician. Some looked confused. Others looked annoyed. A few looked threatened, but the queen didn't seem bothered. One day, after another long discussion, the queen said something that shocked him completely. "I want to test you," she said. "Test me?" "For what?" he asked nervously. "I want you to lead a small task," she explained. "Something simple. Something to see how your mind works in practice." He blinked rapidly. "But I'm not a leader." "You could be," she said calmly. His stomach flipped. "With all respect, I think you're overestimating me." She stepped closer. "No," she said softly. "I think I am finally seeing you clearly." Those words made him speechless. She looked at him for a moment, then added, "You see me clearly, too. You speak to me as if I am not a queen, as if I am simply someone standing in front of you. No one else does that." He felt heat rise in his face again, remembering the compliment he never meant to speak aloud. She must have noticed his embarrassment, because her expression softened even more. "Your honesty is rare," she said. "I will not waste it." Her voice carried a strange warmth. In that moment, he realized something important. The queen wasn't fascinated by him because he was skilled or powerful. She was fascinated because he was honest, something she didn't receive from her own people. He didn't know where all this would lead, but one thing was certain. Calling her beautiful may have been an accident, but the effect it had on her was not, and he could feel it. She wasn't done with him yet. The queen's test wasn't something he understood at first. When she told him she wanted him to handle a small leadership task, he thought she meant checking a device or suggesting a few ideas. He didn't expect what happened next. He was taken to a large room deep inside the alien ship, a room he hadn't seen before. It was busy and loud compared to the calm halls he'd become used to. Aliens in different uniforms were working on glowing screens, shifting symbols, and tracking movement on large maps. It looked like a control center. The moment he stepped inside, the chatter slowed. Everyone turned to look at him, confused, annoyed, or curious. He felt his stomach twist. He didn't belong here, and everyone knew it. The queen walked beside him without hesitation. Her presence alone made the room fall silent. "This human will oversee the civilian transport arrangements today," she announced. Her words hit the room like a shockwave. The aliens didn't argue out loud, but they exchanged tense glances. A few whispered to each other. Some looked frustrated. Only one stepped forward and said what everyone else was thinking. "He is not trained for this." The queen replied calmly, "That is why this will be a useful test." Then she looked at the technician. "You may begin." He felt like the ground fell from under him. "Begin what?" he asked quietly. "Help them create a plan for safe movement of civilians between our two inner colonies," she replied. "Your perspective is different from theirs." He stared at the glowing map in front of him. There were moving dots, shifting lines, multiple paths. He had no idea what most of the symbols meant. His mind screamed that this wasn't his place. "Not qualified," he whispered to her. She leaned closer, her voice soft enough for only him to hear. "You think differently. That is what I need." Her words gave him a strange courage, not confidence, exactly, but just enough strength to take a breath and step forward. The aliens explained the problem. 2 colonies needed to exchange groups of civilians, families, workers, young students. But both colonies insisted on sending their groups first, which created a scheduling fight. The commanders wanted a strict system. One side goes first today, the other tomorrow. But neither colony was agreeing, and things were stuck. He listened carefully, then asked the first simple question that came to his mind. Did anyone ask each colony why they want to go first? The room grew quiet again. One commander blinked slowly. Why does that matter? Well, he said, trying not to sound nervous, people usually have reasons. Maybe one group has more urgent needs. Maybe someone is sick, or maybe one group has kids who need to reach school early. If you ask them why, you might find a solution that works without forcing anyone. The aliens looked at each other again. His suggestion was simple, too simple for their complex political systems. But sometimes simple was what people needed. A communication officer sent a message to each colony, asking the question he suggested. While they waited for replies, the Queen watched him quietly. You are calm, she said. Not inside, he admitted. My stomach feels like it's falling. She almost smiled, just barely. You hide it well. Soon responses came in. One colony said they needed to move first because they had elderly people who couldn't wait long. The other colony said they had children who had been traveling for days and needed rest sooner. 2 very different needs, both important. He looked at the map again and noticed something the aliens didn't. Why don't you send small groups from both sides at the same time? He suggested, split the route into 2 lanes. That way, the elderly get to leave early, and the children also get to rest soon. No one waits too long. The commanders stared at him. Not one finally said, We never thought to divide the route. It's just like traffic, he replied quietly. 2 lanes make things smoother. The Queen turned to her team. Do it. The plan worked beautifully. In less than an hour, both colonies confirmed their satisfaction. The issue was resolved without conflict, without arguments, without forcing anyone. The room looked at him differently now. Not with annoyance, but with surprise. The Queen stepped beside him and said softly, Your mind brings balance where others bring complication. He wasn't sure if it was a compliment or a gentle observation, but it warmed him inside. Later, that day, he found himself walking through the ship's garden-like hallway. He needed fresh air well, whatever version of fresh air the ship provided. The Queen found him again, as she often did. You led well today, she said as she approached. Didn't lead, he replied. I just shared ideas. That is leadership, she said simply. He stared at the glowing pathways on the floor, unsure how to respond. The Queen stopped beside him. When I make decisions, she said softly, everyone waits for my words. With fear. When you speak, no one fears. They listen because your voice carries sincerity. He thought about that. Maybe that's because I don't hold power. Or, she said, because you do not wish to hold power. That thought surprised him. He wasn't someone who liked control. He never wanted to stand above others. He preferred calm roles, simple tasks, but the Queen seemed to see parts of him he didn't even recognize. Over the next days, she gave him more tasks, not difficult or dangerous, but emotionally challenging. She asked him to mediate small disagreements between alien workers, or help advise on simple issues involving trade or scheduling. Every time he used the same approach: listen, understand, and find a solution that respected people's feelings. Aliens didn't always understand human thinking, but that made his role useful. His ideas calmed conflicts they normally escalated. One day, as he entered the Queen's meeting room, he noticed frustration among her commanders. A border issue had come up. A neighboring region had sent a warning, something about a misunderstanding involving shared land. The alien commanders were preparing for a firm, intimidating reply. He asked quietly, why not send a message asking for a meeting instead of a warning? A commander gave him a sharp look. A meeting could take weeks. Maybe, he replied softly, but a warning could turn the small problem into a big one. The Queen turned her head slightly, listening closely. He continued, sometimes people get louder when they think no one is listening. Maybe they just want to explain something. The room fell quiet again, this time with more respect than doubt. The Queen nodded. Send a message requesting dialogue. Even though he didn't understand their politics well, his gentle suggestions brought a peace they didn't expect. He wasn't solving big conflicts, just preventing them from becoming bigger. Still, not everyone was happy. Some commanders whispered about him behind his back. They didn't understand why the Queen trusted him. A few believed he was manipulating her, even though he wasn't. He kept to himself, worked quietly, and never tried to impress anyone. He only wanted to help. One evening, he stepped into a training area where young alien officers practiced their routines. Suddenly, an alarm sounded. Not an emergency alarm, but a signal for evacuation practice. The young officers panicked, unsure of what path to follow. Their senior trainers weren't present. He stepped forward and calmly guided them toward the correct exit path he had seen earlier. Move slowly, not fast, he told them gently. Fast movement makes confusion. Stay in lines. Listen to each other. The officers followed him, not because of authority, but because his calm voice steadied them. The Queen watched from a distance. Later, she approached him. You saved them from chaos, she said softly. It wasn't a real emergency, he replied. Chaos grows even in practice, she said. You prevented it. Her voice carried something deeper: admiration, trust, something warm and unexpected. He felt embarrassed again. He didn't do anything amazing. He just helped. But to her, it meant something far greater. That night, as he walked through the quiet halls, a strange thought came to him. What if the Queen wasn't interested in his skills, but in him? She always sought his perspective. She noticed things about him no one else did. She listened to him in a way that felt personal, not formal. She seemed calmer around him, more human, even though she wasn't human at all. He didn't want to assume anything, but her presence lingered in his mind. The next morning, he was called to the Queen's private chamber again. She stood by the window, her hands behind her back, her expression peaceful. I have made a decision, she said gently. His heart thudded. You will lead the next coordination effort between our outer colonies. His eyes widened. Me? Again? Isn't that too much responsibility? You have already shown your capability, she replied. And I trust you. He felt words gather in his throat, but couldn't speak them. She stepped closer, looking directly into his eyes. You are changing things here, she said. Not with force, not with power. With honesty, with calmness, with kindness. His chest tightened. Then she added quietly, almost as if she was afraid of her own words. You brought a part of myself back to me. A part I thought I lost long ago. He didn't know what to say. He didn't understand how a simple technician could influence a queen, her commanders, or an entire fleet. But he couldn't deny that something was happening between them, something unspoken, something growing. Calling her beautiful had been a mistake. But everything that came after, none of that was a mistake at all. The next morning began with a strange mix of calmness and pressure. The human soldier woke up earlier than usual, his eyes opening before the sun had fully risen over the alien capital. For a few seconds, he just lay still, staring at the soft glow filtering through the curtains. His mind ran through everything that had happened. The training, the battles avoided, the strange bond forming between him and the Queen, and the new responsibility she had handed to him. He was now commander of her army, something he still hadn't fully accepted even after days of leading drills. But today felt different. Today he had to lead his first real mission. He sat up slowly, rubbing the back of his neck. His room wasn't big, but it was peaceful. A small window looked out over the floating platforms and shimmering towers of the alien city. The buildings always seemed alive, shifting colors like they were breathing. He still wasn't used to it. Back home, buildings stayed one color unless someone spray painted them. He got ready, dressed, and stepped out into the long hallway. It was quiet except for the distant sound of guards marching. As he walked, several aliens bowed their heads slightly, a sign of respect. He never knew what to do back, so he always gave a simple nod and kept moving. But inside, he still felt like he didn't belong here. He didn't want to admit that the Queen's trust scared him more than any battle could. When he reached the command hall, the Queen was already there. She stood near the center of the room, dressed in light armor, her posture firm. Her appearance always carried a mix of strength and elegance that was hard to look away from. When she glanced at him, there was something softer in her eyes, like she had been waiting for him. "You're early," she said, her voice calm. "Couldn't sleep." He answered honestly. She stepped closer. "You worry too much." "Because a whole army is supposed to follow me today," he said with a small, nervous laugh. "If I mess this up—" "You won't," she said before he could finish. "You speak with honesty. That is why you lead." He didn't know how to respond to that, so he just nodded. Deep down, he wondered how she saw him so differently from how he saw himself. To him, he was still an ordinary soldier who got thrown into an alien world by accident. To her, he was someone who had changed everything. A moment later, a guard entered the hall and handed the Queen a small device. She tapped it, and a hologram floated above her palm shapes, lines, movement. The map of a border region. "This is where we're going," she explained. "It is not war. It is only a patrol. But tensions are high. Your calm voice may prevent something worse." He blinked. "You want me to talk?" She nodded. Humans speak differently. Your tone can break tension. Sometimes your kind does not realize how powerful that is." Great, he thought. Not only was he leading soldiers, now he was responsible for keeping peace with his voice. No pressure. Busy? Queen stepped closer again, so close that her armor almost brushed his arm. "I trust you," she said softly. Those words hit him harder than any weapon. "Let's go then," he said, trying to hide the way his chest felt tight. The journey to the border region took longer than expected. They traveled in an airship, shaped like a long wing, gliding smoothly above the landscape. The alien terrain was filled with tall, glowing plants, rivers that reflected the sky like mirrors, and strange, misty waterfalls that drifted sideways instead of down. It was the kind of scenery someone would hang as wallpaper on their computer, not something he ever thought he would see in person. The soldiers sat around him, calm and silent. He watched them closely, even though many of them were twice his size. He sensed something familiar: nervousness. Not fear of battle, but fear of disappointing their queen. It reminded him of his own pressure, and somehow that made him feel less alone. Halfway through the flight, the Queen sat beside him. She didn't say anything at first. She simply looked out the window, watching the passing clouds. He swallowed. Once before speaking, "Can I ask you something?" She turned her head. "Of course. Why me? I mean, out of all the skilled fighters in your empire, why did you choose me to lead anything?" Her gaze softened again, like she had expected the question. "Because you do not try to impress me," she said. Everyone else performs for my approval. You simply speak your truth. You said something to me the first day that no one ever dared say." He felt heat rise in his face. "That you're beautiful?" She nodded once. "Yes, you meant it. You did not want anything in return. You were not afraid. It was simple." She looked back at the clouds. Simple is rare. He didn't know what to say. Somehow, the idea that a simple compliment had changed his whole life was shocking. But for her, someone treated like a ruler and a weapon more than a person, it made sense. It was probably the first real, normal, human thing anyone had ever said to her. Before the moment could grow awkward, the ship slowed. They had arrived. The border outposts looked tense even from above tall stone-like structures. Guards watching every direction, weapons ready but not raised. Their airship settled on a flat landing platform. The Queen stepped out first, and the soldiers followed. He walked beside her, trying to stand tall, even though his stomach was tight. The opposing group approached another alien clan with sharper features and dark armor. Their leader looked angry, even before speaking. "You bring a human?" The leader barked. The Queen didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned slightly toward the human soldier, silently telling him to speak. His mind went blank for a second. Great. What was he supposed to say to a group of warriors glaring at him? But then he remembered her words, "Speak your truth." So he stepped forward. "I'm not here to fight," he said, keeping his voice steady and natural. "Your scouts got too close to our border. Our soldiers got too close to yours. That's all it is. No one needs to get hurt." The opposing leader narrowed his eyes. "And why should we listen to you?" "Because I don't want anyone dying." "Over a mistake," he replied. "And I don't think you do either." There was a long pause. The aliens exchanged looks. The tension slowly loosened, not gone completely, but soft enough to breathe. He continued talking, keeping his tone calm. Honest, human. After a few minutes, both sides stepped back, agreeing to patrol separate paths to avoid overlap. It was over. No fight. No wounded. No disaster. The Queen looked at him, pride clear in her expression. "You did well." "I just talked," he said, still catching his breath. "Words can be more powerful than weapons," she replied. "You proved that." As they boarded the airship, he felt lighter than he had all morning. For the first time since he arrived. In her world, he felt like he truly belonged, not as a commander, not as a soldier, but as himself. The flight back was quiet, but it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. It felt warm in a way he couldn't explain. He sat beside the Queen again, and she didn't move away. Their shoulders nearly touched. "You know," he said slowly, "I still don't think I deserve this position." She turned to him gently. "Maybe not yet, but you will." He looked at her, really looked at her, the seriousness in her eyes, the strength in her posture, the quiet fear beneath her confidence that she never admitted. She was powerful, but she wasn't perfect. She was trying, just like he was. "Thank you," he said softly. She blinked once, her expression shifting into something warmer than a smile. Something trusting. When the ship landed, the soldiers greeted them with relief and celebration. They respected him differently, now as an outsider, but as someone who had protected them without lifting a weapon. As he walked back with the Queen through the long hallways of the palace, she slowed her steps. "There is something else," she said quietly. He looked at her, unsure. "What is it?" She faced him fully, her armor reflecting the soft lights around them. "I chose you for the army," she began, "but that is not the only reason I keep you close." He felt his heartbeat jump. "Then why?" She took a breath, her voice softer than he had ever heard it. "Because you show me the world in a way no one else does. You make me feel human." He didn't know what to say. He didn't know what this meant. But he knew it wasn't just about command or politics anymore. And maybe that scared him even more than the mission. But he didn't walk away. He stood beside her, letting the moment breathe, letting things unfold naturally. Whatever came next, peace, conflict, friendship, or something deeper, he knew one thing for certain. His accidental compliment had changed both their lives forever, and it wasn't a mistake anymore.